Hi, this is Father Roth from St. Joan of Arc, Hershey, and I wanted to make a quick video on how to live in quarantine. See, I was on a conference call with a lot of the youth group and their parents, and they were kind of expressing the same concerns in different ways. I'm bored, I don't know what to do, I feel isolated, my families were butting heads. Well, as priest, a time of quarantine is probably a little bit easier than most people to slip into because we do something called a 5-day silent retreat. This is 5 days out of the year where we go off to a retreat house and we basically seclude ourselves from the world. We really don't leave the grounds of the retreat house. We don't have internet. We don't talk to people, even if there's other people in the retreat house with us. And we just kind of disconnect. We spend time in prayer, reading, relaxing. Now, obviously, a quarantine is not as drastic as that, but in many ways, it has a lot of the same elements. So I'd like to talk to you about some of the things I've learned from going on those retreats that I think you can apply to this time in quarantine. But before we do that, I'd like to address kind of a misused term or misunderstood term in our society, and that's boredom. When we say we're bored, we usually think that that means we have nothing to do. Boredom doesn't come from having nothing to do, it comes from having too many things to do and not picking one of them. Boredom is best thought of as the person sitting in front of Netflix, scrolling through and never picking one. And the 3 tips I'd like to give you to kind of deal with boredom in this time in isolation has to deal with making a schedule, living in silence, and enjoying whatever God brings your way. Our first point is scheduling. And scheduling is something we usually don't think about because so many times it's done for us. When we work, depends when we wake up. The children might have events like soccer practice in the evening, so throughout the day, suddenly everything fills up. So when all that stuff gets canceled, scheduling our day becomes a lot more difficult. It's something that falls on us, and it's something we're not used to doing. But in this time of quarantine, it's really important that you do schedule your day, that you figure out when you want to wake up the next day, when you're going to eat lunch, what time you're going to take some time for reading and exercise, prayer. Put these throughout your day. You can either have a really strict schedule where you go hour by hour, or you could have something very loose like here's when I'm going to wake up, here's when I'm going to bed, here's where I'm going to pray. But these 3 things are what I'd like to get done throughout the rest of the day. So if you find yourself and you're like, I'm bored, you can say, oh yeah, I haven't done this yet. Or I could go do this. One of the most important things to do with your schedule, though, is your morning routine. Make sure you wake up, you take a shower, you spend some time in prayer, you eat breakfast, and you get your day going. One thing we do here that can be really helpful is we have mass live streaming on our website at 9 o'clock. So you could structure your morning routine around that. Let's say you like sleeping in. Sleep in till 9, watch the mass, and then go take a shower, get ready, get dressed, and go into your day. Let's say you're more of an earlier riser. Go, wake up, shower, prepare breakfast, and then read a little bit, and then watch mass. It's a great way to kind of use as a cornerstone. Other things that you can schedule are exercise, reading a book, call maybe your family or friends. Could you play a game with them over the internet? When will you do that? Because this will give you structure and form to your daily life and really help you to not get lost in the multitude of things to do. But one thing I'm going to really suggest you add is a period of silence. This leads us to our second point, being in silence. Every household is going to take an hour out of their day and make sure the whole house is silent. Everybody is taking time praying and kind of contemplating and spending time in silence. So as a household, it might be daunting at first, but have people go to different parts of the rooms. Make sure they're not playing video games or someone isn't playing a piano downstairs while another person is upstairs. The house should be so silent that if someone breaks in, it would take the robber a few minutes to figure out there are other people there. That's what I'm talking about by really an hour of silence. What you can be doing is maybe listening to some really soft music, maybe like the Life Teen or hymns, classical music, something to kind of bring you into a period of silence. You could be reading, right, especially spiritual reading. Make sure whatever you read in this period of silence is not what you're reading outside of it. So it's not like a popular book or something entertaining. It's something more spiritual and nourishing. Obviously, the Bible is the best at that. But reading the Bible, listening to music, praying the rosary as a family, and then going to different rooms can all be great ways to introduce this period of silence and start moving into it. Because you're going to get a lot out of that period of silence that's going to make the rest of the day a lot more manageable. So take time in prayer, and at the end of this video, I'll link a video I did about a week ago on prayer. That video is more on how to use prayer to defeat sin, but I go through a lot of different types of prayers, and there are things you can use and do during this time of silence. Now, if you say, well, I always get distracted, I have trouble being in silence, I just have a couple quick tips. The first is there's good and bad distractions. There are good distractions that God brings to your mind that are good to meditate on. Worries, fears you might have, things you have to kind of think about or maybe contemplate. Maybe there's a question on the faith that comes up to your mind during this time. That's not a distraction. That's something to start working through. Spend some time really thinking about and finding an answer to that. And then maybe after the hour, then you can go to Google and see how close your answer was. So there are good distractions, but there are also bad distractions, like the anxieties of life. Oh no, I have to make dinner like this time, I have to do this for dinner, I have to do this for my kids, how are my kids, things like that. Those are distractions you kind of want to move away from. And when how I suggest people to kind of get through those distractions, I think of it like a riptide at a beach. When you get caught in a riptide at a beach, you don't want to swim against the riptide, or else you're going to get tired and you're going to drown. Instead, you swim with the riptide until you can get out of it, then you go to a safe spot and you swim back in. See, when a distraction like that comes, where you're anxious about something, you have to swim with it. And by that, I mean, you kind of have to recognize that you're worried about that making dinner and making sure you have all this stuff for dinner is a worry you have, but you're willing to give that to God for this time. Lord, I know I have this coming up, but I have this hour set aside for you. Help me to move through this time of anxiety. Lord, thank you that we have all these supplies to make food tonight. Lord, I'm really concerned about the coronavirus. It's really been on my heart and on my mind, and it's really almost driving me crazy. Right? You bring it into prayer. You discuss it with the Lord, and that allows you to move to a time of silence. The last point is how to find joy in troubled times. See, as I was growing up, my dad and I would go places like fishing or to the museum, and as we were driving in the car, he'd kind of give me these facts of life. Here's something to know. Here's something to avoid. One piece of advice he once gave me I've always kind of held close to my heart. He said, you can't control the things happening outside of you, but you can choose to be happy. I'm not sure if psychologists and psychiatrists everywhere, alarm bells are going off, but at least for my life, I found this to be true. That even though I would have days where I'm upset, even though I'll have days where I'm sad or angry, I can still find ways to be happy during those times. Some things that you can do when you find yourself angry, upset, or just anxious during these days here is to recognize them. Sit down, put on a silly TV show, something funny or you can kind of not really pay attention to, like The Office, maybe. And start counting all the struggles you're having. I can't deal with this, I can't deal with this, I can't deal with this, this is driving me crazy. Look at all these trials I'm going through. Why is this all weighed upon me? And near the end of that half hour, start counting your blessings. Whatever they may be. Even if you can only find one or two, count them. And spend the rest of the time thinking about that. Thinking about how good they are. What blessings they truly are. Even it's like, my father's sick right now, but thankfully my kids are healthy. And then when you stand up, when you get up after that half hour, leave your stresses, your angers, your anxieties wherever you are sitting and carry only the blessings with you. Another thing you can do is when you call someone, when you talk to people at your house, use about an 80-20 rule. Only allow 20% of it to be kind of anger or annoyances or just complaining. Let 80% of it then be what your blessings are. And really begin with your whatever you're upset with and end with that 80% talking about blessings. Man, I'm having a tough day sitting down and just being calm right now. But you know what? I was actually reading, I was able to get a little bit of that book done. It was such an interesting page that I was able to even sit and focus on, etc., etc., etc. Those kind of things will help you focus. Now, maybe you're going to have a really rough day, and you're going to have to make it where 80% of it is complaining, but make sure at least 20% of it is talking about blessings. And don't do 80% complaining, 20% blessings more than every once in a while. That should be a rare occurrence. Through that, you'll get to kind of choose happiness. Not that you won't only be happy, but you'll be able to find enjoyment in times of trial. I hope this talk has been at least somewhat helpful to you. Know that we here at St. Joan of Arc are praying for you, and that you can always join us in our live streams to pray with us, or watch our videos, hopefully get some more spiritual insights. But ultimately, God bless, and have a wonderful rest of your day.